Investigations going all over the place. Let's get to Sidney Powell. She has a brand new title. Sidney, what's your new title?
Senior Policy Advisor for America First on criminal justice reform and justice reform in general.
Great to have you with us, Sidney. We've got a lot to cover. Sidney, you're also a very noted author, and you've been on our show many times, so you're a legal scholar in these matters. Sidney, I want to go to these allegations coming out now against the president by these various women. One yesterday holding a press conference, very rehearsed, very measured, written statement saying that, well, she was a receptionist at the Trump organization. The president kissed her on the cheek. It destroyed her life. But yet there's no witnesses. There's no corroboration. And Sidney, quite frankly, those of the people that I know that have worked in the Trump organization for some time, women, there's no history of this. None. Zero. What's the deal here?
Oh, I think it's just another smear campaign. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. These allegations are going to get to the point where men are afraid to say anything nice to women or to, show any sort of affection. It's just getting way out of hand. Obviously, there are lots of valid claims by other women in other circumstances, and every time somebody makes a paltry or ridiculous one, it just hurts, or false one, even worse, hurts all the women who truly have valid claims. We've got to get to some balance here. In fact, a friend greeted me in the hall last night in my residence, and I gave him a hug, and he said, "Oh gosh," I mean, it's way out of hand.
It's interesting that you say that, Sidney Powell, because I was thinking the exact same thing. I've got a lot of friends that are females that, you just haven't seen them in a while. You give them a hug. It's just, I don't know, kind of a normal thing to do for some people, right? Especially if you know them. You just give them a hug.
Especially if you're from the South. I mean, we're big huggers anyway.
We're big huggers. It's a little bit different. I mean, I do that with my family, but I won't do it now. Like the last couple of people that I would normally just, hey, Merry Christmas, give them a hug. I'll just shake their hand because it's like I just don't want to get involved in it, all right? And even though these are people I know for a long time and stuff like that, and, I've even had people come to me and say, oh, give me a hug, John. It's like, okay, but it's like, it's just weird. And so I think, maybe it's a good thing. I don't know.
Too far.
Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a good thing. I know that for me, now I'll just shake your hand. That's it. Done. I just don't have time to mess with it. But you look at these allegations against the president, it's like, and we were talking about this with someone earlier, Sidney, the fear the Democrats have is this economy is going to continue to take off, especially if this tax cut passes. And so all they have is going to be Trump sucks. They can't talk about the economy. They can't talk about international affairs. They certainly can't talk about immigration based on this other attack in Manhattan that we just had with a chain immigrant. They can't talk about anything except some kind of personal behavior. That's all they've got, right?
Yeah, they're losing on absolutely everything because they have no policies that make any sense or positions that make any sense. It's not going to work. The American people who go to work every day and pay all these taxes are the engine of this country, and they know it's all baloney.
I think that's it. Speaking of baloney, Sidney Powell, let's get to the Mueller investigation, which was sanctioned to investigate collusion between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. And I want to say this so that everybody understands what the definition of collusion is. It is not somebody on the government-funded transition team calling a diplomat and explaining the incoming administration's position. That's not collusion. What collusion is during the campaign, the Russian government contacts Trump campaign officials and says, we will help you win the presidency in exchange for your position on these policies that impact our government. That's what
And
the definition of collusion is.
Doesn't even appear in the criminal code of the United States. It even bothers me that people are throwing out the word collusion like they've done to try and make it seem like somebody did something bad when there's no crime of collusion. They'd have to prove a conspiracy to violate a federal law. And there is absolutely no evidence of that.
All right, Sidney, so where is this investigation heading by Mueller?
I think he's going to drag it out as long as he possibly can. I think there will continue to be leaks coming out of it that make things sound worse than they are. Even when I read the charges against General Flynn and Mr. Papadopoulos and Gates and Manafort and their indictments, they're very strange charges. In particular, Papadopoulos and General Flynn were completely set up with false statement charges. Never mind that we have absolutely public evidence of Hillary Clinton's numerous false statements to Congress, which come under the same federal statute, 18 United States Code, Section 1001, but nobody's charged her with anything. And the treatment that they gave her versus what they're doing to the Trump administration is such a double standard. I think it offends most every reasonable thinking American.
We are with Sidney Powell. She is a nationally recognized author. You can read her book, Licensed to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. You can get that on Amazon. She is now a senior policy advisor on justice reform for the America First PAC. It's good to have you with that PAC, Sidney. So we spent a week talking about, or the media did, talking about General Flynn, and he was going to flip and all this evidence he had. They got him for basically what Martha Stewart did, lying to the FBI. You cannot lie to the FBI, right? I mean, it's a felony. You can't do it. He did that. They got him for that.
You can't lie to Congress either. That's supposed to be a felony, too.
Yeah, so you can't lie to Congress. I mean, he did lie. He lied to the vice president as well. That's why he got fired. But what else do they have here? I mean, you know, they keep talking about that. Mark Warner keeps coming on my show, the ranking member of the Senate Intel Committee, and he keeps talking about the smoking gun. Where there's smoke, there's fire, but there's no gun. I mean, there's nothing.
There's no gun. There's not even any smoke.
I don't know what there is. Where is the evidence of any wrongdoing in the Trump campaign other than people that lied to the FBI?
They don't have any that anybody that I know of has seen, including Congress, which now is trying to find out more about how this whole thing came out to begin with. I've got articles on the Daily Caller and The Hill talking about Mueller's staffing choices because they don't show any indication of his interest in justice at all. When you have Andrew Weissman, who's actually the lead villain in my book, Licensed to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice, and the book came out in 2014. So, you know, it wasn't written to help President Trump. It was written to spark justice reform because we have prosecutors that have been running amok for a long time. Weissman, for example, destroyed Arthur Anderson and 85,000 jobs, only to be reversed by a unanimous Supreme Court 3 years later. And then he turned his sights on 4 Merrill Lynch executives and sent them to prison for a year on an indictment that didn't even state a federal offense, while he and his team had yellow highlighted but hidden the evidence that showed they were innocent. And the Fifth Circuit reversed 12 out of 14 counts of the convictions against those men and acquitted one of them completely, but only after he'd served 8 months in a maximum security federal transfer facility with the worst of the worst. So what these prosecutors have put people through is beyond imagination.
Weissman get away with it and now has a better job than ever. Why does they get away with it?
Because Mueller's been protecting him and then pulls him onto this task force.
Unbelievable.
And unleashed him to go after Manafort and Gates. And, of course, the president's the ultimate end goal.
Is to just destroy the president, because Manafort and Gates, their actions, where they certainly appear illegal from, you know, what you've seen, just me as a layman, And I didn't get along with either of them, so it is what it is. But that what they did had nothing to do with the Trump campaign, the Trump effort, had nothing. I mean, this was all before they got involved in it, right? So what does that have to do with anything?
In fact, they dug back 15 years into Manafort's information to try to find something and make it sound criminal. And I'm not sure there's a crime in that indictment either. I think it can be picked apart pretty well. Money laundering, for example, doesn't apply just because you move money through different bank accounts. If the money isn't illegal to begin with, like drug money or prostitution money or something like that, the money laundering statute doesn't even apply.
Well, I think what they were saying is they were getting the money wired to them, but they weren't paying U.S. taxes on it.
Well, there's not a tax charge in that indictment.
Oh, there has to be, because
There's not. There's not a tax offense in that indictment. They say that in the conspiracy count, but there's no tax count.
So what are they?
It's very much like the Merrill indictment, where they make everything sound like a crime, but there was absolutely no criminal conduct in the Merrill Lynch indictment, with the possible exception of a perjury and obstruction count, which really shouldn't have been valid either.
So, look, let me just ask you something else. I've maintained that when the media says that it was a violation of the Logan Act for people on the transition team to be called in foreign governments, well, people on the transition team, Sidney Powell, are not private citizens. They're employees of the government. They're paid by the federal government. That's how the transition works. And so when you have incoming officials that are incoming in the administration that have titles like Michael Flynn, incoming National Security Director, or Jared Kushner, incoming senior counselor, incoming, paid by the government, right? These are paid by the federal government. How is that a violation of the Logan Act? In fact, if they were not calling up foreign diplomats explaining the incoming administration's position on certain issues, they would be incompetent. Why isn't that out in the media?
Exactly. I mean, there's a transition team for a reason. I mean, you can't start running the United States of America without some preparation and pre-inauguration contacts.
So, Sidney, when will this investigation end on Trump by Mueller, and how will it end, your opinion?
Well, Mueller's going to drag it out as long as he possibly can. If he starts trying cases, it could go for as long as 10 years. That's basically how long the Enron task force ran. Congress could put a stop to it if it would, and it may very well wind up doing that if it gets the information that's requested from Mueller's team itself. I mean, we have the conflict of Mr. Strzok, the FBI agent who was at the epicenter of the Hillary Clinton interviews and the whitewashing of that, and then General Flynn's interview, and any number of other aspects of Mueller's investigation, who was recently outed as having been having an extramarital affair with another member of the FBI. At the same time, he was sending thousands of anti-Trump text messages back and forth with his mistress. That's just unbelievable, and for some reason they moved him to the HR department. I mean, Christopher Wray, I guess, is responsible for that, which I find incredibly offensive. The man should have been fired.
Why didn't they fire him?
And I don't know why they didn't fire him. And now we've learned this last week that Bruce Orr, a deputy assistant attorney general up a few doors down the hall from Rosenstein, who named Mueller as special counsel to begin with, Mr. Orr's wife worked for Fusion GPS, and Mr. Orr was in league with Mr. Steele working on the dossier against the Trump administration. So the swamp is deep and wide and pervasive. So and Mr. Orr still works at the Justice Department. I don't know why he wasn't fired. I mean, people need to grow a set and do something about this corruption. It's outrageous.
So can Trump survive it? I mean, you got a government fighting, his own government fighting it with unlimited resources. Like you mentioned, this could go on for a decade. They can hire as many people as they want. They have no budget. They can get as many agents, hire anybody. They all have jobs in the meantime, so why would they end it? So how does the president survive?
The voters are going to have to speak up. They're going to have to write and call their congressman and tell them to put an end to this stupidity. It's an incredible waste of taxpayer resources. I think Mueller's already spent over $7 million.
Yeah, and he hasn't even started.
And for what? I mean, most of it's probably for salaries because he brought people from high-powered law firms. He brought his former partner, Jeannie Rhee, who, oh, by the way, happened to work for the Clinton Foundation and helped hide Hillary Clinton's emails and any number of other things. Oh, and don't forget Aaron Zebley, who I think came out of a big law firm, too. He represented the IT guy who smashed Hillary's BlackBerries with a hammer. I mean, they're all Clinton cronies. They're either really Clinton donors or Clinton cronies or both.
Unbelievable. Sidney Powell, I really want to thank you for your insight. We have to have you back to follow this on a regular basis. Thanks for being with us. Sidney Powell, the author of License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. You can buy it on Amazon. Make a great Christmas present. By the way, she's a senior policy advisor, Justice Reform at America First Policies. Thanks, Sidney, for being with us.
Thank you, John. Thanks for all that you do.